Hey everyone, how's it going today and welcome to a brand new video. So today's video is going to be relatively personable where I really just want to share a story in today's video out there about, as the title suggests, how I saved my first $100,000, but even more specifically what might make this video a little bit unique compared to the other people that are making this video is how I saved $100,000 but on a very, very low income basis. And I think that this is something that hopefully will make this video a little bit more relatable than other videos, because the reality is that sadly, as much as I wish, I was not someone that had like a $200,000-$300,000 software engineering job at a FAANG company or anything like that. If that was the case, it would make this video a lot harder to relate to. Instead, I was your typical middle-class average American, in fact, if anything, lower class, because I was living a very poor lifestyle at that time period, paycheck to paycheck. I was admittedly a former engineer, but I was a civil engineer, so I was one of the lowest paid engineers way back, and I left that profession very, very early on, specifically about 1 to 2 years after college. This is like many years ago, way back, about, again, one to 2 years after college, where I left that profession before I could save a substantial amount. So the reality is that this is hopefully going to be a little bit more relatable, because it's talking about someone that saved $100,000, how you can potentially do it too, and how he did it. Me did it off of a really low income basis. So let's just get this video started right on the spot. I did make another video that already highlights why I left my old profession, what it was like, and leaving such a high paying or potentially high paying job at that time period. So definitely check out that video at the very end screen if that's when you finish watching this video, if that's of interest. But today's video is going to be how I saved my first $100,000 off of low income. So with that said, let's just get this video started right on the spot. But as always, if you guys enjoy videos like this, to share some support, consider smashing the like button, consider subscribing and hitting the bell as we pump out similar videos. Feel free to leave a comment about honestly anything, maybe any personal thoughts, or maybe also just any other videos you might be interested in seeing in the future, because we are always collecting brand new ideas about what kind of videos we might potentially want to make. And at the end of the day, this is really for our community at the end of the day. So I think that's the important thing. So with that being said, now let's get this video started. Now, I want to start by maybe saying is that in the process of saving $100,000, you are definitely going to have to make a lot of sacrifices, but this does not necessarily mean you have to deprive yourself of almost everything, because I think at the end of the day, it's still really important to be able to enjoy life. And there was a saying, it's just something, it's not really a quote, but it's just something that I think I always tell a lot of people, which is the fact that you can always make money at almost any stage of your life, but you will never be able to get your age and your youth back ever again, because no amount of money can buy age and youth. And I think that because of that reason, it's still very important to try to enjoy life, especially if you happen to be a younger individual. But this video, of course, is also going to highlight about how you can potentially do what I did as well. So the first method that I really used in order to be able to save my first $100,000 should go without say, but it's really to live very frugally. Now, how frugally? I think it's important to find some kind of balance between what you should and should not spend money on. For example, for me, and I wrote a lot of notes here, so I can definitely refer to them. But the big idea is that you want to be able to you're going to have to definitely save a lot of money and make sacrifices. So for example, during that time period, in order to do it, I, ate very cheap food, which I don't necessarily recommend, but it was something that I just had to do. Ramen noodles, dollar pizza, microwavable food, discounted, food, charity food, or just eating, company food in general. But just trying to save every last dollar, cooking more frequently, eating out less, all of this stuff. It's just really living a very frugal lifestyle, and I think that that's a big part. Because we tried to resort to cooking, we definitely still were able to eat nutritious food. That's what I do say is that I don't necessarily recommend living off of ramen noodles all day, just because there are still actually creative ways that you can eat pretty nutritious meals while on a budget. But it's just something that I think I did that I maybe don't necessarily fully recommend, but I would do it, but it did work for me in order to save up that amount of money that I do, would probably just share out there. I definitely rarely ever Ubered, rarely ever did Lyft. I always used public transportation, all of this stuff. I tried to save money and buy things off of discount, always tried to use a coupon in anything that I bought, tried to save money, buy things secondhand, buy things used, especially if it's something like electronics or just general entertainment or not clothing. I think these days the prices of clothing has dropped a lot, so it's not that difficult to get cheap clothing in general, especially if you're buying it off of thrift shops and stuff like that. But just the idea is just living very, very frugally. Now, the second strategy that I really focused on has to do with everything related to housing. Now, this is one that I think will depend on where you are currently located, your specific location, and what area you're currently living at. But the big idea is that during that time period, in order to save a lot of money, I actually moved back home with my family. Now, I know that this is obviously not an option that every single person has access to. We're going to share a lot of other strategies, so definitely watch through for that, because hopefully I do really genuinely believe that a lot of these options will be available to at least some of you guys, or most of you guys that are watching this. But for me personally, what I did is I specifically moved back home. But I know there's a lot of people that maybe did not have the option to be able to move back home, but they were at least maybe able to move to a lower cost of living area. That's something that's very big, especially if you happen to have a remote job. It's even more feasible to be able to do that. But it doesn't have to be necessarily in the middle of nowhere either. For example, I'm out in New York City, and I know a lot of people that moved outside of New York City to neighborhoods such as like Brooklyn, but specifically like Bushwick, farther places away, Bay Ridge, Queens, Flushing, farther areas than Center City. And the farther you go from Center City, typically in most cities, the cheaper it will be, but while still being near relative public transportation so you can access it. Obviously, we all would love to be able to live in a very commuted, in a very convenient, distance to where we have to be every single day, but it is one of the sacrifices, and that's why I say it's not easy to save $100,000, but it's definitely something doable. And I think that if you're able to find either cheap housing or find affordable housing or even public housing, because again, that is still an option at the end of the day, or to even move back home, you could be talking about saving several $1,000s, and that's definitely going to contribute and help on your journey to $100,000. And I think that's a very big one. The third one is also something that I think will only be able to relate to certain people watching this, but definitely a lot of people. And it's really to recognize that they say that one of the number one biggest wealth killers of of many people's lives is owning a car. And if you're able to basically sell your car, or to even live in your car if you have to, stay in a car. But for people that, actually have housing, if you're able to sell your car or try to live without, a car, this could be talking about saving thousands and thousands, another couple thousands and thousands of dollars. For me personally, I was lucky because I lived in New York City, so I don't necessarily have to rely on a car. And I know a lot of people that if you live in a major city, you probably don't have to rely on a car as well either. But if you are able to get rid of your car, you could be talking about not just saving the cost of the car. So we're talking about, like, let's say a typical, car is like $10,000 on the cheap end. So like a Honda Civic or, a Toyota Corolla or anything like that. Not only are you going to save a couple $1,000s off of that, but you're also going to save thousands of dollars off of gas, off of insurance, off of maintenance, off of parking. Parking in some cities can be talking about $300 to $400 a month. In a year, that's talking about maybe $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year. So by doing that, you're definitely going to make a lot of progress on your journey to making $100,000. And I think that's probably the third way, or third strategy, to be able to really save a lot of money. Now, the fourth way is not necessarily a strategy to save a lot of money, but it is a strategy to definitely at least make a lot of money. And that's by basically just gaining knowledge and educating yourself on personal finance. And I think that this is one of the most important things that you can definitely do. And our channel right here is definitely all dedicated to personal finance. So thank you guys so much for being here. If you guys are still here, consider maybe subscribing if you guys haven't done so for similar future videos on personal finance. But the idea really is that it's really important on your journey to saving $100,000 to be able to just gain a very good foundation of personal finance. So what are some things that you can learn? Things such as like the stock market, things such as like investing, but also things such as like budgeting, saving money, keeping track of expenses, also things like credit card. You know, a lot of people can save a lot of money if they know how to properly use their credit card, because they're able to save money off of things like collecting points, cheap travel. All of these things can be accomplished using credit cards and just general things. So I think that by trying to educate yourself on personal finance, this is definitely a strategy that's going to help you potentially save thousands and thousands of dollars if you know what you're doing, which again is going to be another massive contributor to your journey to $100,000. And then the fifth and probably the last thing that we're going to share, and this is one that I think can relate to almost every single person watching this video, but even more specifically, especially if you happen to be a younger individual that's under 30 or even under 40 years old, the big idea is to try to reduce life commitments. And I think that's one of the biggest things to really recognize, because a lot of people, when they're, let's say 21 years old, they maybe don't have a lot of life commitments in general, so they can live relatively cheap. But then there's a lot of people that as the years progress and go on, and understandably why, and understandably so, they start to make more life commitments. Things such as like getting married, having children, buying a car, buying a house, taking the next move, upgrading a particular part of their lifestyle. And I think it's that by trying to recognize how a lot of these life commitments or these changes in your particular lifestyle can potentially impact you, financially, and recognizing that there's a lot of people that will take the next step to get married, to have children, to, buy a house, to buy a car on a loans, when before they're even able to capably afford it on a comfortable basis. And I think it's by recognizing a lot of this stuff and maybe just trying to take your time. Don't necessarily feel like you have to rush to jump into marriage. This video is not a relationship channel that's, saying don't get married, but this video is, a finance channel that's saying that if you are going to get married, if you are going to have kids, if you are going to take out a loan for a car, which is something that people do not recommend, because cars are one of those things that if you're trying to save $100,000, you probably have enough money to save up for just to pay the whole entire car on the spot without taking out a loan. But if you are trying to, take out a loan for a car, for a house, it might be time to recognize that it might not be the smartest financial decision to do such a thing if you know that you're not deep down inside ready to make such a financial commitment. And I think that I owe it in a lot of cases, and that's why I say there's a personable touch to this video, is that even though I was someone that was living off a very, very low income during those particular years, I was also someone that was living off of very low expenses. I had moved back home. I didn't have a car like just mentioned. I, lived very frugally. And most of all is I also was very hesitant on making any further life commitment. I was someone that waited out a lot of these things. I'm still not married to this day. I still don't have a car to this day. I'm still, sadly, but nonetheless single to this day. But a lot of these commitments are things that by avoiding these commitments, that's how I set myself up financially to be able to save up my first $100,000. But of course, there are so many things that I can possibly share about how I saved up my $100,000. I just think that this is probably the core and the most important strategies that I use to be able to do such a thing. But of course, if you guys have any particular strategies, feel free to share them down below, because those are basically what I want to share in today's episode. So with that being said, if you guys made it to the end, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys made it to the end, consider smashing the like button, subscribing, hitting the bell. I'm going to leave some videos at the very, very end screen that you guys can watch after this that maybe share other personal stories about my financial journey as well. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well, try to stay employed or financially smart, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.